That's the one.
This is Jim Meskimen, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah. First off, what up, Dickie? Dickie's checked in earlier today. Hey, Dickie. Always cool. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about your mom because this show is really about you, but I don't know if everybody knows. And if they don't, let's just spend a moment just talking about who your mom is. Uh, Point to that clever little bust right there. There she is. There's his mom. Mom.
That's Mom. Marion Ross of Happy Days, the semi-immortal Marion Cunningham of that great TV series that ran for 11 seasons on ABC and changed our life, I can tell you that.
Yeah, what an incredible thing. So was her career a launching pad for you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, what she gave me, though, was a solid foundation on which I could build a launching pad. So she put down a layer that made it, very, I don't know, a little more, I don't know, it got me a little bit of a leg up in terms of professionalism. So, anytime you live, like this is probably true of you and many of your listeners, is that, if you have a professional person in your house, even if you're not doing what they're doing at the time, you pick up through osmosis and by observation a lot of what is the reality behind this job. And I saw what it meant to be a working actor, and it isn't what the public generally would see or appreciate, right? So it's not all red carpets and premieres and, I don't know, getting awards and stuff like that. It's very rarely that. It's more, having to memorize lines over the sink while you wash the dishes because your kids need food, and driving to an audition and making connections any which way you can with friends and so forth, and tons of stuff that the layman wouldn't necessarily know. So that was extremely valuable. And then she just had a very outgoing and ambitious, I would say, approach that I found very helpful to have been exposed to.
That stuff, I get to see behind the curtain quite a bit. I've run lines with actors before who are my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes just running lines with someone new, and you're like, I feel bad about asking to have someone run lines with me, And look, I'm glad to do it. I'm glad whatever my friend is doing, whatever it is, I'm glad to help. Like, hey, you want me to sit here while you just put this engine together? Yeah,
exactly.
like, yeah, it's just nice to have company, So whatever that thing is, and by the way, it's when you go to these award shows, it's work. Like you're having to work off hours, and you're like, you never complained about it and everything else, but you would rather be home with your kids or whatever it's going to be. There's a lot in acting that is not you standing in front of the camera looking all glamorous and everything.
No, it's very rarely that. It's mostly you standing around waiting to get called to the set, sitting around in a dressing room or driving somewhere to some weird location where you may sit around all day and not work.
Yeah.
And then come back the next day at 6 a.m. or something. So, but I can't complain. I mean, we can complain a lot about it, but it's all a little bit of a humble brag. In the end, people do find the life of an actor to be very kind of privileged in a way. And it is but we've earned that privilege by insisting on being actors and artists. I think any artist goes through that. People turn around and go, "Oh, what a fun time you're having painting that painting." You're like, "Well, yeah, I went to art school. I had to learn how to do it." And an actor who's like having a swell time on the set with other big actors or something, well, they've worked really hard to get there, and they've competed against other fine actors. So, it's not much different than any other profession, really. In that way, anyway.
Yeah. When you're growing up, you often realize that you're pretty good at impersonations or impressions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you, the class clown, or were you, I mean, like I can imitate some things. I can do a pretty good Roger Rabbit, and that kind of thing.
Oh, good.
I would never say I was the class clown. I cracked jokes, but I wasn't the class clown. How would you put yourself?
Yeah, neither was I the class clown. And that's a very particular trait that involves a lot more bravery than I had as a kid growing up. I always felt a little bit unstable. My parents divorced when I was 8. I don't know how much that has to do with it, but I just didn't feel like very tremendously confident after that. But I was actually at that age, I was a cartoonist more than anything else. And although I'd love to experiment with voices as well. My identity was, the kid who drew cartoons in the class and did the school paper and did the yearbooks and stuff like that. And which is a very introverted kind of not outgoing personality trait, at least in my case. So it was really not until my teenage years that I began to reach out a little bit and do a little bit more performing. And for some reason, I had just all my life practiced and been intrigued by accents, vocal quality, and these things that impressionists sort of study and wrap their wits around. So by the time I was 17, I could do a lot of different voices, and it was kind of easy. It was like a machine or an instrument, you might say, that I knew the parameters of very well.
Yeah, the thing you talked about with working on these different parts and accumulating voices and realizing certain voices link or play off of each other, and then Jay talks about like you have to have a home base because you'll drift into your Andy Garcia from your Christopher Walken because you're thinking about the material and everything. And so he's like, there's certain words that he can say that locks him back into that impression. Does that resonate with you at all?
It does, but I don't resort to that very much. I find that is not something I need unless I don't understand the character very as well as I probably should. So, because that's kind of like a trick in what I do is I notice something about a character that I just really appreciate a lot. I just have high affinity for it. And then like an actor, I just sort of try to become that person. So that, for example, like Patrick Stewart is someone who I've watched enough of to realize that there's something very attractive and appealing about his personality, the way he expresses himself. And you can see that I physically manifest a different sort of character. Now, I don't need to think, oh, well, I need to hold my shoulders thus and so and do thus and so with my eyebrow. I just sort of become that fellow. And it all comes along as a sort of a package deal.
That's so funny. Why do impersonations, why do they crack us up? Why do we love them so much?
Well, I've asked myself that a lot because for me, it was like, as I said, I started off as a cartoonist. I studied painting. I did visual art and illustration. I designed cartoon characters. And I sort of begrudgingly got into the impression world because that's what actually got me more attention as an actor and frankly made me the most money. So I would I had to kind of analyze it and sort of figure out, well, what is this? And why do people get so enchanted by it? And I too am enchanted by it when not in myself, but in other great impressionists that I know. When I see them pull something off, I'm like, oh, I just like that. I just think that's neat. And I think it's because it's a kind of a magic trick that fulfills a couple of functions, I think, that make it interesting to people. It just comes out of nowhere. We don't see the mechanics because the mechanics are all based on ephemeral things that have nothing to do with physicality exactly. If I suddenly become Robin Williams, something's happened. Well, what has happened? We didn't see it happen. It just sort of dropped on us. And, it's a wonderful magic trick that way. It happened because of a decision. I decided, oh, boom, now's the time. Here we go. And it also accumulates out of study that you've done of the person, but you don't see the working parts. So, you don't see the trick. And then it's sort of a marvelous feeling that, oh, that guy is here. He's not here, but he's here.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's worth thinking about.
And then Kevin Pollak talked about when he developed his Jason Statham. He didn't know he could do that.
Oh, right.
And have you heard him talk about this?
Yeah. He appeared on a show that I was starring in called Impress Me. He did a guest spot and he explained that Jason Statham thing where he says 6 words in like one breath. One.
I mean, it's like Joe Mead. Yeah, that's what he says.
You know what I mean? You know me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is a way to kind of figure out the DNA of a character, their vocal quality. That happened for me with Morgan Freeman years and years ago. When I was listening to Morgan Freeman and he was doing the voiceover for on a commercial for the movie Seven with Brad Pitt, and you could hear I heard Morgan Freeman say, there are 7 deadly sins. And at the time I went, oh, that's interesting. I kind of know where that goes in my face. That's a 7. There's 7. And it was sort of contained a lot of information about where that voice originates in, what you'd have to bank it off of. And I don't know. Mechanically, I don't know exactly what it means, but there's a physical feeling when you locate. For example, Jeff Bridges is another guy, man. You got to kind of figure out where that sound is coming from because it's not coming from the same place, man.
When you're sometimes when my daughter was small and I would be mad at her, I would try to be mad at her in another voice just to teach the lesson and
get me to any blame.
Yeah. Mostly to not break out the hammer every time something happened, and so I would try to talk to her these different things and sort of I call it a lot of times called it punishment, we're like, okay, you're gonna get punished, but we're gonna have a good time doing it. We're gonna learn this lesson and everything. And so that often involved impersonations and everything. Do you have things like that?
How did that? I'm curious. How did that work out?
Oh shit, I don't know. I mean, my daughter's pretty good. She was a great kid. So
she weathered it.
Yeah, between her mom, myself, and me, I'm the idiot, so this is
well, yes, of course. If you're in a family with a daughter and a wife, I have the same.
Yeah.
It's incurable.
Right. And
I'm sure you're happy to be the idiot too, and I'm happy to be the idiot.
Yeah. No, it's totally fine. And I was and all credit to her mom. I was gone a lot because of deployments and everything. So she really did the bulk of the raising. So I just came in when she's like, I'm out of ideas. I'm frustrated. And so I knew that frustration and anger had already been thrown at the problem. So I'm like, how do I approach this differently? And then, my dumb brain is like, let me do my impersonation of Roger Rabbit, or whatever it's going to be.
Were you, we know so little about one another. I know nothing about you. You're in the military. You said deployments.
Yeah. A lot of deployments. I was a spy in the Army.
A spy?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Are you allowed to say that?
Yeah, I just said it. I say it all the time. I even wear shirts that say spy because I'm not a spy anymore,
Okay. That's exactly what a spy would say.
Exactly right. What's funny is when I would be honest about it, people would never believe me.
Sure.
But when I'd say, oh, I work in Iraq a lot, no big deal. They'd be like, you're probably a spy, aren't you? And I'm like, well, technically, yes, I am a spy. And they're like, nah, I don't believe it. So as soon as you were honest, they just dismissed it. So I'm like, I'm just going to tell everybody. It's no big deal. When you develop a character, Colonel Sanders, for example.
Yeah.
How what is that process like, man? As you're trying to think of it, are you in the mirror? What are you doing?
Well, Colonel Sanders was a case where, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and he still did his own advertising. So I have been exposed to a lot of Colonel Sanders content directly from the guy, through the television. But in my mind, I had that voice very well recorded. And I knew it was right in my wheelhouse too, just from the kind of timbre and the sort of vocal quality that I already contained. So I just, when the audition came up, I refreshed my memory with YouTube.
Yeah.
But I already was coming at it with a lot of confidence, and that helps a lot when you have a lot of confidence about what you're approaching and you feel like you've been exposed to it. Like, when I was young also, Woody Allen was tremendously popular. And so, I would come out of the movie theaters, talk like this for half an hour, until it wore off.
Yeah.
So the Colonel Sanders, what I did was I just recorded myself and I watched the videos and again, I tried to embody the viewpoint of the character. It's not just the external factors, because anybody can dress up like a person or anyone can learn a phrase. You see this a lot with, it's interesting, amateur impressionists, let's call them. A lot of them glom on to, particular lines. I'll be back. Hasta la vista. These things that, are kind of iconic lines, which again are sort of, for me, a little bit surfacey. They're, anybody can do that, and we're familiar with those lines, and it's great because it's a great shorthand for an audience. If you're doing a joke or something, you say, hasta la vista. We know exactly what that means, where it comes from, the whole thing. We have a lot of familiarity with it. But like for me, I'm not very good at remembering lines from celebrities. That's the least interesting part for me. The most interesting part is, who are these characters? Who are these people? And how would they be? Christopher Walken has a lot of apparently famous lines, but I don't remember them because I'm more interested, frankly, in his viewpoint and the kind of way that he would say something. So,
yeah. There's certain imitations that go out of favor because, the person passes on. No one goes like, yeah, you dirty rat, or like that kind of thing anymore. Everyone used to have a John Wayne. Nobody has a John Wayne anymore, right? These things just, for whatever reason, leave the zeitgeist and everything. Are there any old timey ones that you hold on to? And then why do we lose like a Sammy? Like everybody did a Sammy Davis Jr., right? He was such a character anyhow. Why?
right.
What is it about that? I mean, why do they lose their relevance, even if they're still relevant in culture? Just that, no one does a Sammy Davis Jr. anymore.
Well, I dare say probably quite a few people do, but you're right. They do fall out of favor. They get out of fashion. First of all, it's a generational thing. So, you could do a killer Sammy Davis Jr. And if your audience is under 40, they might go, well, that's interesting. What is that?
Yeah.
There's no relevance to me. But a funny thing happened one time talking about John Wayne. And yeah, you're right. Everybody did John Wayne because he was a major movie star right up until pretty much the day he died. And an important figure culturally too, right? And then, but again, fallen. Who's the last John Wayne movie was probably in the late
40
70s,
years ago. Yeah,
over 40 years ago. So, who's been exposed to that? Well, people that watch old movies. Well, who are those people? I don't know. I don't know who these people are. But I went and did a little show one time at a kid's school, an elementary school in Clearwater, Florida. And I did a piece that I always do where I do a Shakespeare speech in celebrity voices, and the people call out different celebrities for me to insert into that monologue. And somebody called out John Wayne, and I did the John Wayne thing, and the kids were like, wow, yeah, nailed it. They were very appreciative of the John Wayne. And afterwards they were saying, well, it was good. You're John Wayne. So I'm like, these are kids in third grade.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Did you do the whole bad knee kind of walk thing that he did and everything? Because everybody had the physical imitation of him too.
No, I don't think I did. Because I was just standing around. But sometimes voices and characters go out of favor too because the person suddenly, nobody wants to, like people used to do Bill Cosby a lot.
Yeah,
with a real kind of fun, with the wonderful fun, childlike view of life that he used to portray in his comic and his stand-up stuff, which was great. He was one of the greatest stand-ups of all time. And then we found out, he was a criminal pervert, and that changed the whole message of that. And then if you did Bill Cosby, it was for a whole other reason. You were communicating a whole other thing. This likewise with Robin Williams, right after his death and for quite a while afterwards. I didn't do Robin Williams' voice. And I think a lot of guys probably shelved it because it no longer meant or inferred creativity, thinking outside the box, a lively disagreement with the status quo. It meant, this tragedy that none of us could really wrap our wits around. So now, with the passage of time, it seems to, now we remember more the inventiveness and the great positive qualities of the artist and not so much the tragic finale. So I've been doing it a lot more. I think Frank Caliendo, I know, has been doing it more. The guys that do it, we do it as often as we can. I still do it for Disney every now and then because that was how I began doing it.
Yeah, there is, with someone like Bill Cosby, who we know definitively that he did these horrible things. However, we also know definitively that he did these incredible things. It was such a public servant and a cultural servant, and he did so many things. It is, but it's stuff like, let me do my Bill Cosby for you, everybody. All right, here we go. And then if you do like the dad and the chocolate cake bit, they'd be like, I don't like it.
Yeah, it's got an undercurrent to it. I'm just
or even people used to do an OJ, and it's like, I don't want to portray a double murderer. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And Kevin Spacey.
Oh my
Kevin
God!
Spacey used to, I mean, whenever I did Kevin Spacey in my act, I always pointed out that he's sounded like, in order to do Kevin Spacey, you have to numb out the bottom half of your face and then suck all the humanity out of your soul. And I just did that just on the basis of what he sort of portrayed, because he always portrayed people that were, uber sleazy people, and he did it so magnificently well. And then we discovered, well, maybe there was a reason he could access that. So
maybe it wasn't that much acting.
Yeah. I actually worked with Kevin Spacey on probably his penultimate film, which was a movie about Gore Vidal, which we shot in Italy, in Rome, which was a great gig for me because I was playing Johnny Carson. I was doing my Johnny Carson interviewing Gore Vidal.
Yeah.
And they flew me to Rome to do that.
Okay.
And then when I got there was a set that looked like Burbank. So it's one of those lucky breaks.
That's funny. Yeah. One of the impersonation things that fascinates me are people that impersonate someone's impersonation. And one of my favorites is Michael Stipe mid-song imitating Andy Kaufman, imitating Elvis. And he's like, hey, baby, doing like his.
That's right.
I think these things are wonderful when someone does someone else's imitation of an imitation. And sometimes you can get someone else's imitation of an imitation of an imitation, which is very rare. But I collect these moments in my mind because I just think it's brilliant to take someone's thing and then just slightly, Yeah. Do you have any examples of those things?
No, but I was going to ask you for an example of an imitation of an imitation of an imitation, the fabulous triple. I mean, that's very rare.
The fabulous triple. So this was in class when we were in spy school, and there were these guys, and we would just spend time imitating each other, And so, like, if they didn't have a mustache, you'd put your finger there, So even if you had a mustache, you imitated the guy doing this. So you would put your finger over your mustache, and then do their bad imitation of the guy, who's actually imitating the teacher, and so. It was this really fun thing that you could do. And I didn't realize we were doing these, multiple layered imitations, but they were always funny if you got each element right. If everybody could follow the chain of the imitation, like, ha, 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 I'm going to go dumpster diving, that kind of thing. That would be the thing, right? And even though the original person sounds nothing like that, it would be, the element of it, which would go to the next person. I don't know. Anyhow, these are things that interest me.
That's fantastic. Well, it reminds me a little bit of something I've done from time to time on stage and in videos on my YouTube channel. By the way, everybody should go to my YouTube channel and subscribe because I put out a lot of content. That's my little pitch. But I used to do hybrids. And sometimes still do hybrids. You put two celebrities together, and that's something I learned from the old actor Larry Storch, who's also still with us in New York. I think he's 98, 97 or 98, still in New York City. And I met him through my mom, of course. And Larry Storch, one day I saw him at an audition in New York when I lived in New York. That's where I got into voiceovers and things. And Larry Storch was sitting there with a little piece of paper and a list on it, a handwritten list. And on this list, there were 50 or 60 names of celebrities, Muhammad Ali, Howard Cosell, and these names that he knew. John Wayne was probably on this list. And he was trying to figure out a hybrid of some characters that would work well for this, whatever this audition was that he was sitting and we were auditioning for. And I went, that's interesting. Why not take, if you took this character like John Wayne and you put some Noel Coward in there, and suddenly would turn out to be a fellow that sounded a bit like this, and a British fellow who had this strange cadence in his voice. And it's like, oh, that's a fun way to create something. And nobody would ever go, oh, well, that's just a cheap John Wayne with some English accent tagged on. You wouldn't necessarily notice that. It would be a starting point to create something new. Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you like to come up with your own things, or do you like to modularly fit into the project? I mean, obviously you get hired by a lot of people to do a lot of different things, but what's your sweet spot? And I guess to go with that compound question, when you meet someone at a party and they don't know who you are, who do you say you are?
Well, I'm usually pretty open. I'm usually pretty honest about who I am. These days, with the masks and everything at parties, you got to pretty much, you got to lay it out as truthfully as you can right away. But for my sweet spot, I don't know. It depends. It depends on the job. A lot of my work is imitating other people.
Right.
And even if I do Colonel Sanders, obviously, I'm now I've created a sort of a Colonel Sanders that is its own sort of entity and isn't complete fidelity to the original, because advertising is very selly and punchy, and they want you to be excited about things, and it sort of sounds, hey, it sort of gets pretty excited pretty fast, and then who the hell is this guy? But I do also like to invent characters, and I try that quite often with auditions. But in my case, more often than not, I'm mainly hired to sound like other people, which is funny. Now, for years and years, I didn't do impressions very much for a living. I did my own voice. I was just a 30-something guy who was used for. I did a lot of advertising, a lot of radio. It's just you'd be the husband or the spokesman for some company, and I didn't necessarily do a lot. Like Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, which was a tour de force. I believe you agree. That was an awesome performance. It was so funny, and completely inoffensive, in every way. Right. It was marvelous.
And he was just a dude playing a dude who's playing a dude. Like that was like
playing. That was a triple right there. Yeah.
It's so funny. I wanted to ask, since we talked about Kevin Spacey, I wanted to ask about truth, like David Mamet, like, show up on time and tell the truth, but not tell the truth. It's like what your truth is. And Kevin Spacey has this smarmy, disassociative kind of truth that he just, right. And so there's certain things like, Clint Howard just brings a truth to him. He doesn't really matter what he says. You see his face, he does something. There's all kinds of actors like that, where their job primarily is to just be that thing that they bring, no matter, they can't help it.
Right. That's their choice, and that's their career. And and it's marvelous. And in Kevin Spacey's case, I often thought, because my wife grew up with Kevin Spacey, did plays with him and stuff. So I've been aware of Kevin Spacey since I was in high school, and he was kind of a big deal even back then. And I thought, well, there's tremendous value to have a character actor that can very convincingly portray some of these. You use the word smarmy, which I think is perfectly acceptable. These kind of lower emotions of people that we actually know. We run across these people all the time that are like, wow, you look like have you just been betrayed down to a level and committed little social crimes yourself to a level where you're just not quite participating in life on the same basis as the rest of us. And that kind of person shows up. And they're wonderful to see in films, and they're peppered throughout literature and plays and things. Like, the character of Iago in Othello is this smarmy, nice, appearing nice guy. There are several in Shakespeare that are just very unctuous, and they seem on the face of themselves to be very supportive. And then what they're actually doing is poisoning you on a daily basis, or ruining your career, or having you beheaded for one lie or another. So it's very valuable to have guys that can really go down there and explore that and husband that, if you will, and really bring it off. And I dare say some of those people are right down there in that level. So they're like, this is the way I live, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
You never see. Robert De Niro. I have tremendous respect for Robert De Niro. Obviously, as an actor, he's one of the great actors of all time. And he portrays generally people that are, very marginal, ethics wise, and they're not, it's light, frothy comedy starring Robert De Niro doesn't happen so much. That being said, he did so well in those Analyze This, Analyze That.
Yeah.
But playing a mobster still, but you never saw him as the kind of the clueless husband who was like, surrounded by a bunch of kids. And, they were making comedy gold out of that. That's not nobody would buy it. It's not the chords that he plays.
Hey, everybody should go check out Jim Meskimen. The link's right down below, or check out his YouTube channel. It's also down below. And
Hey, it's down here too.
a lot of this great stuff. Yeah, artist down there.
Yeah,
And
right.
also, if you're gonna support the Break It Down show, go to breakitdownshow.com. Look, click on the store and get yourself a shirt. Today's shirt is the Soundwave Break It Down show shirt. Working on another one that should come out this week. Or just go to the PayPal link. Look, I don't need Patreon. Get them out of the way. I need you. I need me. $5, $10, $15 a month. This is the modern marketplace, right? I get to create this show.
Please pay this man. He is operating out of a tent.
I'm in a tent. I worked my whole professional life in a damn tent. So that's a great way to support me. And obviously go to Jim's channel and just look, he's all kinds of stuff on there. So definitely go check that out. But you don't just create things on YouTube. You create a variety of things, whether it's, well, look, you did a whole bunch of comedy stuff during the pandemic, but you're going to Italy to play Johnny Carson in Burbank. So let's talk about some of your current projects, because you got a bunch of them.
Yeah, I do have a lot of stuff coming out. There's a show called Gaslit with Julia Roberts and Sean Penn that I appear in a couple of episodes of. That's a limited series on Stars. It's I believe they had their 3rd episode released last night. No, 2 nights ago on Sunday. I forgot what day it is. And I'm coming up on episodes 6 and 7. I play Senator Gurney. I get to grill Julia Roberts. The special today is Grill Julia Roberts. And I work with Sean Penn as well. So that was a lot of fun and very interesting. That's a Watergate drama. That's kind of, I would say, pretty fanciful. Pretty, I call it historical farce, but interesting and very of the moment. And then I also just finished work on a terrific comedy series that's going to come out, I believe, in October on Apple. And it's called The Big Door Prize. And it stars Chris O'Dowd. I don't know if you know the Irish actor Chris O'Dowd. Anyway, he's terrific. You saw him in Bridesmaids, and he's just charming as hell and a really, really wonderful actor. And Gabrielle Dennis is in it. Anyway, a lot of very talented people. And that's a show from one of the creators of Schitt's Creek, if you saw that show.
Right, fabulous.
With the Levy family. And this is a fun show too, about it's a kind of a high-tech fortune-telling machine that falls into the middle of this town. They discover it in a grocery store, just kind of gets there out of nowhere. And it takes some of your genetic information and other things and it spits out this card, which tells you what your real destiny in life should be. And with high degrees of accuracy, and people really start to buy into it, and they get really interested. And they start changing their lives. Anyway, it creates a lot of chaos. The Big Door Prize, and I worked on that in Atlanta, and that's a real fun series. I think it's going to be very good, very successful on Apple, probably in the fall. So there's that, and I just launched an online course actually in becoming a working actor, because I've been a working actor for 35 years. I've been on Friends and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and going back to that, and I was even on Happy Days, an episode of Happy Days. I was I was the kid on the beach that said, "They got a shark out there."
Moments before they jump the shark.
Months before they jump the shark.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So working actor for 35 years. So I've got a bunch of courses in how to develop your voiceover career, how to do impressions as part of it. And that's all. You can find out about that at jimworkingactor.com. jimworkingactor.com. Find out all about it. And it's been working on that for a couple of years during this pandemic, so that because I get a lot of people come up and ask me on various platforms, how do you become an actor? How do you become a voice actor and stuff like that?
Let's get that link up there so everybody can see it.
Jimworkingactor.com. That's it. Yeah, that'll bring you there.
Yeah, down below in there. Okay, so when you're putting a course together, I mean, this is the thing. This is what people do now. I mean, I've got a course on how to ask questions like a spy and everything. You can really grab someone's expertise, and then get someone's expertise in how to put a course together and how to design. You can get a course on how to grow dragon fruit. I mean, everything's available. it's a remarkable time for that. Do you
Yeah.
consume any of these things at all? Did you who did
Yeah,
you get?
yeah. I mean, I'm always floating around on YouTube listening to what people say about this and that. And whenever we have something around the house that needs fixing, it's amazing.
Oh my
You
god,
find
yeah.
I mean, you can find, almost down to the model of the appliance, how to fix the tubing on that
Yeah,
that thing. And
yeah,
I think it's a great one of the great benefits of the internet. There are many detriments, but that's a great benefit is that we can share this kind of information and even very specific knowledge with one another. And like you say, asking questions like a spy. I mean, that sounds very interesting to me.
yeah.
Uh, and as an actor too, I use it as a research tool constantly to find
Sure.
out, what do people sound like in this part of the world, and what are
Mhm.
they into, and I just get interested. Stuff comes up on my feed. I'm sure this happens to you too, and you're like, oh yeah, what about that?
Yeah,
What about it? I'd like to go inside a nuclear submarine and take a little tour, and
yeah.
it would. It seems like it's valuable, and it is because it's all human experience. It helps us understand one another,
Oh, I
and
love it. What are the and I'm sure someone does it, and if I had more time, I would probably do it, but I'm fascinated by the life cycle of things, right? Whatever that thing is, and so, I don't wanna be vulgar, but, like, when you throw away your trash, we'll just say, right? Well, what happens next? I know that truck comes, but there's another step or 5 after that,
yeah,
like, here in California, we're getting rid of our food waste. Okay, you know, what does that equal? And is it actually worth it? Like, is there an
right,
actual
right.
bang for the buck? Because it sure is. I've talked to a lot of my friends about this food waste thing and this news, so we're all complaining about it. But maybe if we had a better understanding that this is worth it, or you know what, raccoons are going crazy, and this is a pain in the raccoons are now ravaging cats in the neighborhood, and oh my god, all my chickens got killed because now there's more you don't know. And so when you follow the life cycle of something, like I just finished this laundry detergent in this plastic jug, it goes to the recycling bin. Where does it go next? What happens next? I would watch that stuff all day long to see what those things were because I want to have a better understanding of how to be a better steward of the earth or whatever it is.
100%, 100%. Nate asked there in the middle of that if it's actually possible to learn how to be an actor. I think so. I
Okay.
mean, obviously, there is a thing called talent, which we all recognize, which I think is just a kind of I don't know, an inborn special ability,
Right.
and that's great. But there are plenty of people that don't rely completely on their talent because acting is something that can. I mean, it is a skill set that can be learned. It can be practiced and drilled. In fact, my wife has an acting school that is very, very unique in California called the Acting Center. Uh, www.theactingcenterla.com. And they teach acting there, and it's really something that absolutely anyone can learn. Does it mean that people will hire you? Not necessarily, but
Yeah.
but it does mean that you can learn the craft, and then you can learn the other part of being an actor is figuring out how to succeed at auditions, how to market yourself, and stuff like that. But that's a little bit distinct from the job of acting, which is taking on and convincingly portraying another character, another viewpoint in life. So I always say that you want to be a musician, you want to be an artist, a painter, you want to dance. Pretty much anybody can do it to some degree or not. Will you be a superstar? Well, no, probably not, because it's just percentage wise, the thing we respect about superstars is they do something so in advance and so above what others do that they're in a whole unique realm. I think I was heard an interesting quote the other day that genius uh, genius is a person that can remember the quote he heard the other day. So
Yeah. True.
it'll come to me, but at the moment it's parked somewhere.
Well, let's not get too. Well, it will come to you, and especially if we get away from it for a second. So let me
Oh
just
yeah, yeah,
throw the
I
link.
think I've got it now. I think I got it. Thank you. You sparked it. So talent is hitting a target very well every time. Genius is hitting a target that no one else even sees.
Yeah, smart. Yeah. No matter how you cut it though, when you are an actor or a singer or a whatever, you are running a small business. And boy, oh boy, like, here's the thing with the podcast. I had a meeting yesterday, like, how do we improve the podcast? And then all of a sudden, hours and hours and hours, like tens of hours of work started flowing at me. And I'm like, I make a podcast. I would like it to do well, but I don't have like the guys like when we spent $100,000 on an ad budget, we had to make sure it all counted. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Whoa,
whoa, whoa, whoa,
back
whoa,
up.
whoa. I don't have $100,000 ad budget. So yes, I want to be prepared, but I can't be $100,000 prepared because I don't have $100,000, So you have these things where you end up doing a lot more of what you don't do to manage the thing that you do, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. As a freelancer for most of my life, I understand 100%. That's you struggle very hard to get, that 10-minute period where you're like, now I'm doing it.
Yeah. Thank God I get to go to Italy so I can act like I'm in Burbank. Yes.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that was special.
Yeah, Michael Gaston is a guy he grew up in my hometown. He's, just older enough than me that he's like let's say a full high school generation ahead of me, right?
Right.
But that means he babysat people that I knew and everything. And he's for those that don't know, Michael Gaston is very, very, very successful actor who's played with everybody, much like Jim. And when I can't think of the other actor's name, but Jim often plays. I'm sorry, Michael Gaston often plays an imposing guy, right? Like whether he's a police chief or a muscle for something, or he just fills up the room with this menace and this presence, and that gets him a lot of roles. There's a lot of things like that. And then man, who's the guy? I can't. Powers Booth. When Powers Booth passes, Michael kind of graduates up. It's like, well, let's give all of Powers things to Michael, and then there's this vacuum behind Michael where other guys get this. But there is a cost to this. We had a guy named Dominic on the show, and he looks just physically in general like Suge Knight. So anytime someone has Suge Knight in a story, he has to play this villain all the time. And then you're like getting into this character, and his form of acting is very, much where he assumes the character. What are your thoughts on these things where there's only, okay, so anybody can be an actor, anybody can take the course and all that kind of thing. But as you get up higher and higher, there's fewer and fewer jobs. And there's maybe for a guy like Michael Gaston who works all the time, that means nobody else gets those jobs because he's the guy you call to do that one thing, right? Do you get what I'm saying? Like it's just, it gets really crowded up there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's, down at lower levels, all the griping happens about those guys in the upper levels, right? Meanwhile, any of us would be very happy to be that guy at the upper level that can somehow squeeze in time for, I could do that other part, right before I go on vacation, I could do that other one. And then these days, an actor, because of the speed of production has increased so much, an actor can do an animated film. They can do an appearance on a TV show. They can do an independent film, and they can do a big blockbuster all within a 2-month period. And then they can pepper that in with a whole commercial campaign that's worth, several $1 million, from them kind of endorsing a product and numerous other things. So, it's like, well, that is the reality, folks. And sure, we can poo-poo it and bemoan it, but the fact is, any of us would be delighted to be inconvenienced in that way.
Yeah.
Can hardly wait to be, so busy and yet, just picking off the cream of these jobs. So, that's sort of the brass ring that a lot of us are waiting to grab onto. And I don't know. It's the reality of the business. The business has changed a lot, and fewer in general in the arts. It takes fewer artists can create more work and occupy more attention, right? Yeah. So, and also you've got now a stockpile, an enormous stockpile of entertainment. You've got all the movies in the 20th century that survive. Now we're a fifth of the way through this century. We've got even more. It's gone into overdrive as far as, like platforms and shows and series. We all, anyone who's lived through the 1970s and 80s goes, wow, I just can't keep up. There's so many shows. There's so many things. I don't even know who these people are. Well, that it's just this proliferation of entertainment. And will that just sort of overload at some point? I doubt it. But the other factor is that since there is so much going on, they don't quite have to pay so much actors to do things. We're all working pretty cheaply these days, unless we're George Clooney or someone like that who can command a massive salary for doing very little.
But he really becomes an executive producer is what he really does, and then acts when he wants to, right?
Yeah.
And then probably underpays himself as an actor.
Probably just stiffs himself and then yells at himself in the mirror, "What's the matter with you? Why don't you work with me? I'm trying to help you." I like George a lot. I've worked for him a couple of times. He's a really lovely guy.
Yeah, yeah. This whole thing though about the business, right? And I had Bruce Valanche on before. I had Rob Paulson on. These guys,
Rob's great.
oh my gosh, I love that guy.
Yeah,
so when these guys are talking about their careers, you can be someone like your mom who gets into a long-term show and it really defines your career. Now there's great benefits in that. There's a lot of stability and everything else, but it's also like, wait, are you Barbara Billingsley? And there's cost in that, right?
Yeah, you have to make your peace with it. Yeah.
Right. You can go work in the daytime drama industry, and boy, oh boy, those people are incredible. What they do. I've had a couple of them on the show, and I'm like, I cannot believe we had Lorenzo Lamas on the show a while back, and he did some daytime drama in one of those fallow points in his career, and he's like, no thanks, Tom Hanks, that is hard work, because when you want to have a side project, boy, you really, it's not, you've got to be built for that world. So you're more of an independent guy. You want to take on these projects. So you're not going to, at least for now, you're not going to have some kind of procedural show where you're on for the next 10 years. Here comes LA Law and they're knocking on your door and they're going to redo it, whatever. But would you look at one of those other spots and think like that's the sweet spot, or are they all sort of their own sweet? How do you define the industry, and where do you think, did you end up in the right spot?
Gee, I hope I haven't ended up anywhere yet, but I still feel like I'm still trying to make it in this business. I'm still just trying to pay the bills and feed my family and move forward and do better roles and stuff like that. I do think about these roles. I see actors my age or in my age group that are the guy on the procedural show that once an episode walks in and says, "I think you better look at this. It looks like he was taking Nembuphambitol. And he's got an X chromosome, and that's I can see that as being like, wow, you can see it from two ways. Wow, you've won the game, because that show's going to run forever. They're going to give you a raise every year. You're going to know exactly what your schedule is like. You just have to remember how to say these Latin words every week. If you can get past that. But on the other hand, you're in prison because it's so below your abilities. Most of those actors are so far greater and far more talented than they are ever allowed to be on those shows. It's a job, right? Yeah. So I've never been stuck in that trap. Would I turn it down? Probably not. But in the meantime, I feel like, just this conversation, I'm realizing I've made it. I have really made it, because I have this weird, I got to play this German judge in this show that's coming out in August. I got to play the senator in Gaslit. I'm in the wonderful role that I can't talk about yet in the Big Door Prize. And then a lot of short films and independent films. I'm playing like this crazy vampire guy a little later on this summer. I'm going to play a guy in a film about the first Black NBA player. And then I get to do my own content. I get to be Colonel Sanders. I get to anything I think up, basically, I can put on TikTok, I can put on YouTube, and I can make friends that way and stay creative. I'm like, this is it. It doesn't get too much better than this, except performing for live audiences again will be a really nice return.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation when I get a chance to chat with you folks, because you're right. In so many ways, you have made it, and it's it's just remarkable to look back and be like, here I am. I've done all these things. I have all these things coming, and it's really fantastic. I'm gonna have to stop the show because I'm getting a bloody nose, and I don't have any way to deal with it.
Oh my gosh,
we're almost done anyhow.
Well, you go away, and I'll just talk to your audience.
Just vamp for me for 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So just in general, look, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show.
I'm going to tell people I was on a show today. I gave the host a bloody nose. Yes, that's how I felt.
And make sure you say the break it down.
I gave the break it down host. I gave him a bloody nose. I didn't care.
Right. He's a spy. I punched him in the mouth. So we'll throw this question at you, and I'll work on trying to stop this thing up. But Noel asks, why do actors switch between acting and directing? It seems popular. And then just give your final thoughts on whatever, and then I'll run the roll at the end. So go ahead and do that, please.
You can put me on the full screen if you want. I think you can do that.
I will do that. Yeah.
Well, that's
wrong guy.
Wrong guy. That's the bloody nose guy.
It's the bloody nose guy.
Well, to answer the question while you're, oh, no, that's not the one. There's another. There we go. That's it. So, Noel, thanks for asking the question. I know in my experience, when I watch directors like Ron Howard, I've worked with Ron Howard on 5 of his films. And Ron is constantly in motion. He's, when you work with him, he's talking to you as an actor, and then he's going around and talking to the camera department, and then he's going over and talking to lighting, and maybe he's a production designer, and maybe a producer or two. And there's something appealing, I think, to an actor who spends most of their life sitting around waiting, frankly, sitting in the trailer, sitting on the side, waiting to go on. There's something appealing about an aspect of the job in movie making that is in constant motion and constantly engaging and requiring tremendous amounts of problem solving. And it helps the time go by faster. And of course, it's more of an expression of, whatever artistic goals you have. So in my case, I think, to the degree that I've wandered into directing, which is very light, I've mostly directed audio projects, big multicast productions of audio stories. But I've, thought about directing a lot, and it would be from the viewpoint of, I just hate sitting on my tail. I'd like to go around and have more of a say, have more control, and also just be busier, during the day. And it is a different function too. I think the director, of course, puts his stamp or her stamp on the story and how the story should be told. And we all kind of have an opinion about it. And even every actor on a set has their opinion about how this, it could make this scene better if I came through the window, not just through the door, but I kind of came through the window. They get these ideas and concepts. And of course, the actor has no power to institute any of that. They can just kind of go, I have an idea, and maybe somebody picks on them. But the director goes, you know what? Let's do it this way. And lo and behold, that's what gets done. So that's very appealing, don't you think? Be fun to be able to do that. And
just give me your final thoughts before we wrap this thing up, and I'll run this thing and then stand by. Go ahead.
Final thoughts. Being an actor isn't for everybody, but being an artist, I think, is for almost everybody. To be some kind of an artist, we all create, even if our art form is our family or our household, or the way that we dress our kids in the morning. There is an artistic, aesthetic kind of flow and urge that everybody has, that I think, in my experience, I would say, indulge that. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about, can I make a living at it? Will this offend somebody? To hell with all that. Just do it, and then you will learn from it. If you never do it, there will no learning be.
I love it. No learning be. Here we go. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.